served with distinction and brought a very particular passion to those issues. And so both Michael and Han understand, because of their experience, our experience, what it's like to be at Queen's Park and be champions for local communities and for the province. And to have Juanita here today is also a real honor for me and for all of us. And I would say that because Juanita and all of her colleagues are literally on the front lines today, having to deal with decisions that come from Queen's Park and that affect education, the education of our youngest kids. And so I want to thank all three for being here. And Han is right. We are here today to have a little bit of discussion. We'll be happy to take questions when I'm done my opening remarks. But I would say there are a couple of things to keep in mind with respect to yesterday's budget. Yesterday, the Ontario Conservative government decided that they'd be investing $5 billion more than the last budget that was delivered by the Ontario Liberal government. $5 billion more. I thought about this yesterday afternoon and I came to the realization, never has a government invested so much to deliver so little for the families of Ontario and the families in fast-growing communities like York Region and across the GTHA. And there's a whole series of areas in which they've fallen short of the mark with the announcements that they made yesterday. I'll just point out a couple before we open it up for questions. So we know that healthcare consumes a significant portion of Ontario's budget. We know in our own families, when an aging parent gets sick, or a child, or we ourselves get sick, and our entire life shrinks down to the size of a hospital bed or a waiting room, we want to make sure that we have a healthcare system that's responsive to our needs and provides us and our families with top quality care close to home. And what we heard yesterday, with all of the growth that we have, particularly here in the GTHA but beyond, we see announcements relating to how much Doug Ford wants to invest in healthcare, and we realize that those investments will not be able to keep up with the healthcare demands that we have, especially as our communities, as our loved ones, get just a little bit older, like my own parents. That's one. Two, I talked a little bit earlier, I touched upon being on the front lines in education. The single most important part of our economy here in Ontario is that we have, through many, many years, built world-leading talent. We have trained our young women and men, whether it's in college or in university or primary and secondary school or in the skilled trades. There's a reason that when Amazon was thinking about where to put their second global headquarters, that the Toronto region, including Markham, was on their map and was actually shortlisted. The reason is because of our talent. You can't create world-leading talent that will provide for a very successful economy if you don't prioritize education. And what have we seen so far over the last number of weeks, and in particular yesterday from Doug Ford and the Conservatives? We've seen that they are quite prepared to fire thousands of Ontario teachers, to take us backwards on files, issues like autism, and to know that they have literally cut hundreds of millions of dollars from college and university student aid, and from the budget of the Ministry of Training, colleges and universities, hundreds of millions of dollars, making post-secondary education, college or university, less affordable and less accessible for more and more families. And standing here in this part of the GTA, we know very early on that they decided to cancel the York University Seneca campus that was going to be built here. And they did the same thing in Brampton, and they did the same thing in Milton. We know that class sizes in primary and secondary grades will almost assuredly go up. So very clearly, Doug Ford and the Conservatives don't have a clear plan for investing adequately in education and making sure that we can go forward together. That's an attack on talent, and that makes no sense. Two more things really quickly. I mentioned earlier Michael Chan and his role as International Trade Minister, working closely with the rest of us in government. And both Han and I had a front row seat to see exactly how hard Michael worked. Everything we do globally to diversify our economy so that we're not relying on just one partner all of the time requires that we do have a champion and a very clear ambassador like Michael, who worked so hard. But it also requires that we have the infrastructure in place so that we can lure more investment from around the world to Ontario to create the kind of jobs that we need. They closed the Ontario Investment Office. That's what they announced yesterday. How do you build a world-leading, diversified economy that can literally put thousands of young women and men to work for the future when you don't prioritize luring more foreign development and foreign investment to our province? A very clear indication yesterday from Doug Ford and the Conservatives, they do not have a sustainable plan for Ontario's economy, which is deeply troubling to me as the father of 2 young children, 2 daughters who are 11 and 7. Daughters that I want to grow up in a province that has a resilient, strong, and just economy, and a strong healthcare system, and a strong education system. The last thing I will touch upon, I served for 3.5 years as Ontario's Minister of Transportation. And we know here in the GTHA, but frankly, in more than 100 communities across Ontario, we need to invest more every single year in all aspects of public transit and transportation infrastructure. And I know that just a couple of days ago, Doug Ford, along with his ministers, stood in a room not unlike this one in another part of the GTA, and they unveiled a big, shiny map with all kinds of lines on it. Well, I had the job as minister for 3.5 years, and I will tell you that the easiest thing in the world to do is draw new lines on a map. That's not going to make your commute shorter at the end of the day, or your transit more affordable, or our economy stronger, or our environment cleaner. Drawing lines is not what the people of Markham, or Vaughan, or the GTHA need. We need more transit built now. We need transit fares to be more affordable and accessible now. And what they didn't tell you 2 days ago when they unveiled the big shiny map is that in the budget that came yesterday, they literally cut billions of dollars out of transit support for 107 communities across Ontario. Every single year, the Government of Ontario sends money annually through what we call the gas tax program to municipalities who support transit. York Region gets that money, Toronto gets that money, and over 100 communities across Ontario get that annual investment for state of good repair, for more service, to make things more accessible and affordable. We committed as a government not that long ago that over the next couple of years we would double how much these municipalities, more than 100 of them, would get from the gas tax plan. We wouldn't increase the price at the pumps. We would just take more of the money that we already collect and develop it and deliver it out to support transit. Doug Ford in his budget yesterday, one day after claiming he would support more transit, cut that additional funding. So in the City of Toronto, for example, over a decade, John Tory said it yesterday, that's about a $1.1 billion cut to transit support. Here in York Region, I believe last year the gas tax provided York Region with somewhere around $15 to $20 million. That number was going to climb because Ontario Liberals made the decision to invest in transit. Doug Ford said yesterday he wants to take us backwards on transit. Backwards on the economy, backwards on education, backwards on healthcare, and backwards on transit. Ontario can be so much better than it is today under Doug Ford if we once again focus on progress and results. We as Liberals will continue to focus on that. We'll continue to work hard. We'll continue to do meetings like this and gatherings like this so the people of Ontario understand that we will be a compelling alternative in 37 months when the next provincial election starts, so that we're ready for success and we're ready to beat Doug Ford and we're ready to put Ontario, our province, back on track. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you for sharing